Deacon John Wilson here, Education Enrichment Director for West Angeles Church. And I'm going to do a video probably in the next 2 days on UC and CSU. Are they under pressure from the Trump administration or not? I just did one about Harvard, and I'm going to do one eventually about Maine. But before I do that, it's necessary for us to discuss what is the Title IX. What does Title IX say in the U.S. Education Code that each administration says they're following? Why don't we read for ourselves what it is, and then I'm going to show you a history of how the different administrations have taken colleges back and forth on it. Shout out to the administrators at Boise State, Sonoma State, and other schools that helped me with this video because they pointed out that depending on who's in the White House, we move back and forth. But that we may be on the verge of a breakthrough this time in establishing separation for what I call postmodern thought. Now, postmodern thought, I'll cover it another time, but what it is it's they can say things like there's many genders, not just male and female, even though it's not good science. But all that's fine. People can define gender any way they want. But when it comes to sports, we have to follow Title IX. So let's read Title IX together first. Then let's look at a history of what's occurred. And let's look at what's happening over in Great Britain. All right, so here's some research I've done, and I'll put it down in the description block. You can click and have your own copy, or just take a picture of the screen. So I really want parents and youth and those who are athletes to really understand this. What does Title IX, or IX, which is Roman numerals, mean? What does it mean in NCAA sports? Title IX is a federal civil rights law in the United States that was enacted as part of the Education Amendments of 1972. I seem to have a typo up there. I'll correct it in the document you get. Now, what does it say? No person in the United States, shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving financial assistance. So this goes for athletic teams. Everybody agrees that you can't exclude a biological female, from being on a team, and you have trans women on the team, meaning men who are chemically being changed to women, but still contain the physical attributes of a man. You can't get rid of those, i.e. men playing on women's teams. And so the latest interpretation is some schools, athletes, females, have refused to play against teams that have these men, because there have been women who've gotten injured by men like this in the Olympics and in volleyball across the country. I think I saw one even in fencing like that who gave up, because men are different than women. I mean, men are not women. Now, I know this is going to upset a lot of people, this video, perhaps, but studies show that 8 out of 10 of you agree with me. But this is Title IX, how it's worded. In the context of NCAA, let's read this together. In the context of NCAA, National Collegiate Athletic Association, and college sports, Title IX is best known for its impact on gender equality in athletics. It requires that schools provide equal opportunities for men and women in sports. So we know that some men's sports had to be discontinued because you had to have equal participation. And that created a controversy, but that's the law. That's how the law has been interpreted, including scholarships, facilities, and resources. So all those have to be the same, men and women, if they are recipients of federal funding. In every school, just about every school in this country, students take Pell Grants and loans, and and they get research grants. Now, Pell Grants and loans can't easily be withdrawn, like I said before. They probably can't be, but certain grants can be withheld from schools that have men playing with women, I suppose. If you think this is new, hang on with me, okay? I'm gonna tell you I'll show you the history of Title IX and how it's been applied. This has been instrumental in increasing the participation of women in athletics. So you can see it's for getting women involved, biological women, into their own athletics. Over time, Title IX has significantly contributed to growing visibility and support for women's sports. So this thing was passed in 72, right? 1972. In 1972, there was no knowledge of genders. It was just male and female. They wanted to have women's sports teams get the same resources that men's sports teams get. This had nothing to do with transgender. Okay? It's been an interpretation by administrations on how they handle it. So I'll include a copy of this below for you. But then I want to show you the history, if you will, of the application of this, because it turns out it depends on whose party is in office. Until recently, that's been the situation. So let's take a look at that. Here is a Title IX timeline beginning in 2011. Any kind of changes or memos that were sent to schools that kind of change it. And what you're going to find out is when there's one party in office, Democrats, they've expanded the definition of a woman to include trans women. And that's what's created the controversy recently. During the Biden administration, you'll see there was the most pressure put on schools to allow trans women to play in sports. But almost right after the election of the current president, there's been a backtracking of that by the NCAA, who agreed that men should not play with women. But you have the problem with state laws. About 9 of our states explicitly allow it. And eventually it's going to go to the Supreme Court. Okay? Well, let's look at this timeline. 2011, they seem to be more interested in, if you read, by the way, I'll include a link to this. They seem to be more interested in sexual violence, which I agree with. 2014, 429. Also involves sexual violence. Nothing about gender. This is under President Obama, right? But then we get to 2016, coming up to the election in 2016. OCR issues a DCL, a change to this regarding campus obligation. Listen to this: to provide transgender students equal access to education. That seems okay. And activities. Activities is a problem, right? In response to bathroom bills. At the time, North Carolina and other states have said men go to men's bathrooms, women go to women. Men can never go in women's locker rooms and women's bathrooms. So that would seem to have kept trans women from competing in sports with women. So the Obama administration in May 2016 clarified that they were opposed to bathroom bills. They were opposed to the bathroom bills. They felt that trans women should be allowed. You'll hear more about this. And then in May, ACE, which is the American Council of Education, publishes an issue brief summarizing recently released changes memos on campus obligations to provide transgender students equal access to programs and activities. Open the door for that. This is in May 16. But then the election comes, right? And 2017, right here, President Trump is elected in his first term. And in his term, they reversed all that. Said, no, men can't play on women's teams. They further strengthened it here. Again, you'll have a copy of this. In 2018, They modified the regulations to deal with sexual harassment and assault. So again, every administration seems to be strengthening that. But we're looking for the stuff based on gender. The 2020 election occurs. Okay? They repeated what they said in 18, that trans women and trans men, trans women are men and trans men are women. So they could not dress in the locker room or be on the teams because they weren't really women, trans women. So the new Title IX took effect on 8/14/2020 before the election. Then the election occurs and Joe Biden becomes president. So the Democrats in power, and almost right away, they reversed it right back to the way it was. So see, this has been going back and forth for a while. Then we get down, you can see all the different rules. They strengthened it here in 23. Second proposed rule dealing with the eligibility of transgender students to participate in men and women's sports. This is 23 under the Biden administration. They strengthened it to allow it. So that's when you start seeing trans women, seeing state laws be changed to allow it. And of course, that administration wasn't going to penalize because they wanted to see that happen. But then we get to 24. See how it's going back and forth? We get to 24, and oh my goodness, after the election in 24, you can see all the strengthening in their Biden, even as late as 8/16, because things are starting to go to the courts, okay, about Title IX. And then let's see, down here in February 4th, 2025, President Trump's in office, new administration, a new rule declaring it will enforce Title 20, which was enacted in Trump's first term. He wants to go back to the way it was, when men play with men, women play with women. Now it's going to be very interesting in California what's going to happen, because their state law seems to allow it. And in CIF high school, I haven't been able to find out if there's any men wanting to play with women, but in colleges there certainly is. Like San Jose's volleyball team, which other women's volleyball teams refuse to play against, has at least one man on the team, one man who's playing with women. And again, he's big, he's really tall, and is actually bigger than the women. And teams didn't want to play against him. Now, I'm not, again, any Christian that, thinks evil of people who are transgendered is not a child of God. That's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this to clarify what's going on with Title IX. And the answer is, depending on who's in office, that's what affects how they interpret what sex means, male or female, or does it mean trans? So it looks like it's going to go to the Supreme Court. And I think that if it goes to the Supreme Court, the court we have, they'll rule they will go ahead and rule along with 80 or 90% of the country, which thinks that men should not play on women's teams, men should not dress in the locker room with women. This is primarily an issue with Democrats. Many Democrats want to do this. They say it's not a problem. I just want to make sure I'm as clear as possible. There is also an interesting article I want to show you on what's going on in Great Britain right now on this. Again, we're talking about what the court might rule. I don't think they'll rule on this until June. I think that they've got a case that they can rule on this somewhere that's getting through the courts, and by June they'll be able to take a case. And I'm sure they'll take the case. Let's take a look at what's going on in England. Here's an article here in CNN. I'll include its link below as well. I have a link to the timeline as well and to the other document. But what the UK ruling on definition of a woman means for same-sex spaces, the culture wars, and more. Let's take a look. United Kingdom's Supreme Court has ruled that woman is defined by biological sex. So he's not if a man thinks he's a woman. Under the country's equality law, excluding transgender women in a case that's expected to impact accommodations, meaning athletics, for trans women in bathrooms. Now assume locker rooms, hospital wards, sports clubs, there you go, and more. The court ruling on Wednesday is defining the term woman within the country's Equality Act of 2010, meaning trans women are no longer protected from discrimination as women, which is a win for women, in my opinion. So that's what's happening in Great Britain. So I'll include a link to this. The article is really very interesting. You might want to read it. So it's pretty clear to me if our Supreme Court gets it. I think they're going to define a woman as a biological woman. They're going to say in 1972, when Title IX was enacted, it was clear it was male and female. That's all we had. All right. Again, if you want, this has tremendous implications on the educational environment of our schools and the athletics and the NCAA. And that's why I covered it here. If you want to see videos like this that could impact your youth or that are going on at your kids' schools, click like and subscribe. Improve our reach. If you felt this information was useful to you in any way. God bless you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.